with the exhibitionism, you exposing your genital for sexual arousal, where the voyeurism is
You peeping
watching
in.
someone,
Mm.
yes, to gain sexual pleasure. So with the exhibitionism, you have to expose your genital. So exhibitionism is one of the paraphilic disorders. Yes, the atypical, those with atypical sexual interest that violates norms and laws. So exhibitionism is a pattern of behavior where someone gains sexual arousal or sexual pleasure from exposing his genital to unsuspecting person. So the person get the excitement either from the behavior or the action itself or the reaction of the victim. And we are educating them to know something about indecent public exposure and exhibitionism. So if you know someone who is going through this, struggling with this, you can encourage that person to go and seek for professional assistance. So there are three elements that you need to consider before you can say this behavior is public indecent exposure. So one is intentional act. The exposure have to be intentional. It has to be deliberate, not accidental. And the second one is public place. It has to occur in public places.
Maybe you've had a word called exhibitionism, or maybe you've had people talk about being a victim of seeing someone masturbating publicly or exposing their genitals. Today, we want to look at this condition called indecent public exposure, or we can say exhibitionism. It's a condition that people have, and we need a mental expert to help us with a better chocolate friends. Joshua, our mental health expert, you're welcome again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for the dedication. So, what is this big word that I just said? Exhibitionism, or maybe indecent public exposure? Are they one and the same, or what is it?
No, with indecent public exposure and exhibitionism. Exhibitionism is a disorder on its own.
Exhibitionism is a disorder.
Yes, but certain acts of exhibitionism are also indecent public exposure. So, indecent public exposure is the intentional or deliberate revealing of your genital or any private parts of your body. It can be your breast, it can be your genital to someone in a public place or in a place where it is visible to others, where it is likely to offend people, disturb them, or shock them. So that is indecent public exposure. Yes, and we have three elements. If it is a disorder, we will say diagnostic criteria. But this one, it seems more like an exposure or behavior. So there are three elements that you need to consider before you can say this behavior is public indecent exposure. So one is intentional act. The exposure have to be intentional. It has to be deliberate, not accidental. And the second one is public place. It has to occur in public places or places that are visible to others. And the third one is offensive to others. That is the exposure or the behavior has to offend people. It has to look like a distress to people. It has to be like a shock to them. So these are some of the three elements that you need to consider before you say this act is indecent public exposure.
So it means that the person who witnessed it was not expecting it, and the
Yes,
place that it is done is not a place that you can say standard of decency
yes,
does not allow that
yes,
particular
yes.
behavior.
So
All
the
right.
examples. So one is flashing. Yes, where someone will intentionally expose her genitals to someone. and we have public nudity, where someone will expose nakedness in public places, and we have sexual acts in public places, where people have sexual activity or they engage in sexual intercourse in public places, such as parks, such as entertainment cinemas. Yes, and we have what we call solicitation. That one is more like prostitute related act. Um, it's more with the prostitutes where they have to flash to get potential clients. When I say flash, they have to lift or show certain parts of their body to attract potential clients. So all these are examples of indecent public exposure.
So you talked about maybe intimacy at the park,
Yes,
pool, the swimming pool,
yes,
gym,
yes,
be considered as part of it because it's a public swimming pool.
yes,
And if it's a gym, it's a public gym that you don't expect to see.
yes.
So as long as it is in a place where it is public and people are not expecting that behavior, it is an indecent
Public
public
exposure.
exposure.
And we have some situations or some instances that the law protects, such as breastfeeding a child in public places. And we also have what we call wardrobe malfunction or clothing mishaps. That's when a wind blows up your skirt for to expose your private part. Those situations or instances, we have law that protects these ones. They seem to be an indecent public exposure, but the law protects people who engage in those acts.
So if the wind blows, you're not in control of the wind.
Yes,
If your child wants to breastfeed and you're in a public place, there's a need for you to do that. You're
yes.
protected.
Some people may see that as unintentional and even help you rather than judging you.
Okay.
Yes, and even those who swim in pools, you know that after swimming, you see that your shirt become transparent, yeah, it becomes see-through. So
Yes.
all these are seen to be indecent public exposure, but the law protects.
Okay, so there are
Yes,
certain criteria,
yes,
behavior in certain places that they are protected.
yes.
So what if someone who I know, but I don't have that kind of relationship, send me a nude picture when I was not expecting it? Could that be classified as a public indecent exposure or flashing?
I don't think that has to be an. It can be indecent exposure as well.
If I'm not expecting it
Yes,
and I don't have that relationship with them that I should see
yes,
their nude pictures.
yes.
Okay,
It can be indecent exposure,
okay.
but it cannot be public indecent exposure.
Exposure because it's between me and the person.
Yes,
Okay. Okay. So you talked about exhibitionism. Now we talked about indecent.
indecent public
Yeah,
exposure.
yeah. So what? Can you give us some more explanation on this?
So, exhibitionism is one of the paraphilic disorders. Yes, those with atypical sexual interest that violates norms and laws. So, exhibitionism is a pattern of behavior where someone gains sexual arousal or sexual pleasure from exposing his genital to unsuspecting person. So the person get the excitement either from the behavior or the action itself or the reaction of the victim.
Oh, really?
Yes, and it is mostly treated with criminal offenses.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So they get satisfaction if the person is so upset, angry, scared. They get the satisfaction because the
Looking
person.
at how
Mm,
the person is going to respond to the situation, the
mm,
reaction is there. So if I see your genitals like, wow,
mm.
yes, so the person would then know that you have an interest in what he is doing.
That's what they think or feel.
Yes,
All right. It might
yes,
not necessarily mean that this is what you are thinking,
yes,
but to them it means you have an interest.
yes.
All right. I see. I see. So they get the satisfaction from that. So how do we diagnose people like this? Because with the age of online dating, the increased online dating apps and everything, I'm sure there is a lot of nudity and other things
yes,
going on, they're also in the increase. So how do we diagnose exhibitionism?
yeah. So with the diagnosis, as compared to the voyeurism, the only difference is with the exhibitionism, you exposing your genital for sexual arousal, where the voyeurism is
You peeping
watching
through.
someone,
Mm,
yes, to gain sexual pleasure.
mm.
So with the exhibitionism, you have to expose your genital. So when there is recurrent and intense sexual pleasure from exposing your genital to unsuspecting person, yes, it becomes a criteria. And also when that happens for 6 months and over, and also it has to cause significant distress or impairment in other important aspects of your life.
Of your
And
life.
mostly it is non-consensual because you didn't seek any consent from the person you exposed your genitals. So you have to take notice of the consent.
Mm.
Yes, it has to be consensual. If you don't seek consent from the person, then it's exhibitionism. Yes,
All right. So with this, it has to be for a period of 6 months.
yes,
It has to be that the person is cannot control the urge unless they expose themselves and
yes,
then they feel okay that they have
yes,
they feel a relief, a sense of relief and accomplishment and powerful.
sure.
All right, all right. Do people like that normally come to the hospital, or does it have to be again similar like the other ones where they have
Yes,
legal implications before they can come?
similar like the other ones.
Ah,
I said it earlier that they always seek treatment with criminal offenses. So when they are taken to court, they are fined, they ask them to pay huge amount of money. That's when the judge will know that this person have this particular problem. They have to take the person to see psychologist for further treatment. Yes, most of them will not come to the hospital themselves for treatment unless something happens, then they will come for treatment.
when we look again, because normally from the previous episodes, when you look at the background, what triggers or what are the things that happen in childhood, does this also has a relationship with childhood abuse experiences and things like that?
Yes, most of them have relationship with childhood abuse, especially the sexual abuse or trauma, and certain mental disorders too can cause that. And with that, people with bipolar, when they get to the manic
Mm,
episode, they become hypersexual.
yeah,
So they are
okay.
likely to, do that. And also people who didn't meet their emotional needs, yes, when they were growing up, yes, they may do that to gain attention. Social media dares. Yes, I dare you to do this. If you do it, I'll give you this money. These are some of the triggering factors or risk factors that is making people um,
I,
show their genitals to
I want you
people
to go back to the bipolar and explain. You said when they're in the manic
in
state.
the manic state.
So simply when they are in their high and happy state.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
can you explain what happened to them? One of the things that they do.
So it's just a condition
Mm,
that the bipolar is just a mixture of depressive episodes and manic episodes. So you know that when you are in the depressive episodes, you have low energy. Yes,
mm.
and your serotonin level and everything is very low. But when you move to the manic episode, the dopamine increases. And we know that dopamine is a neurotransmitter which operates in the brain reward system. It is responsible for motivation, social pleasure, and all that. So when the dopamine increase or it's in excess, yes, the person is likely to become hypersexual, get that kind of sexual energy. Yes, so it triggers them to
Expose
expose
themselves,
their yes,
go on sex rampage
yes,
with different people,
yes,
and then they have also an interest in exposing themselves.
yes. So
All
these
right.
are some of the co-occurring
Mm.
mental disorders that can
That to get
trigger.
that they can trigger.
Yes, yes.
Does ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, also play ADHD?
Yeah, ADHD,
Mm.
most cases, but not all.
Mm,
So it's not that included in
mm,
some of the risk factors as well,
mm,
but it has something to do with impulsivity.
mm,
Yes, so most people with ADHD have impulsivity, and you know that they will do something without thinking about the consequences. So most people are likely to, do that, but it's not included in. Yes, but people with ADHD can do that.
can do
Yes,
exhibit
because of the
flashing.
impulsivity symptom they have.
All right.
Yes,
Okay. So if I go to a party and I see that this person is the center of the party, the way they dance sexually, the way they dress, and even if nobody sees them, they try to expose themselves in some dance or bowing down in this. Could it be also a character or some of the things, the behavior that characterizes exhibitionism?
I'm not sure. The way you dance at the
Mm,
party has to do with distance. But when you intentionally do that,
mm-hmm,
yes, you intentionally do that. That will be an indecent public exposure. And when you expose your genital to someone with the aim of sexual arousal or gratification, that's when it becomes exhibitionism. Yes, but just the way you are dancing at the party and all that does not have anything to do with exhibitionism. But when you have the intent of, getting sexual arousal from doing that, trying to see the reaction of the person you are exposing so that you can gain sexual gratification, that's when you can say the person is having exhibitionism.
all right.
Yes.
Okay. So for the non-consensual, what's the impact on them? Let me say I'm sitting on a bus, I'm sitting on a train, and somebody just come and flash up their genitals. How does it impact me
Yes.
as a
So
victim?
So the person that you expose your genital to at that moment is going to go through some emotional distress as well. The person is going to be angry.
Mm-hmm,
The person is going to be anxious in the bus.
mm-hmm,
Yes. And also, if the person have been abused
mm-hmm.
sexually before, it's going to trigger that. And when it trigger that, during the night when they sleep, they will start to have nightmares, flashbacks, then they start developing post-traumatic stress disorder.
Because
So
of the exposure.
yes, and even when it happens in a bus, do you think next time I will sit in that bus again?
Oh,
No, I
mm,
might prefer to take aeroplane instead
mm.
of
Sitting on a
in a
bus,
bus
or maybe
because
I say in a
yes,
train.
I'm just avoiding the situation.
Mm,
Yes, so most people will find it difficult to, use that same transport
mm,
that means to, travel.
mm. So, for people like that, maybe we know people like that, and who may not be willing to seek medical help. They've not had a court case
Yes.
forcing them to go and seek medical help. What do we do in communities like that? Or now, what do we do if we have people like that that we know friends? What can we do to help? What kind of support or professional help that is available? Because
Uh,
sometimes you say they are forced by the court
yes.
because of legal issues, but
Yes.
this person is not forced by the court. How do we help them? What is there that is available out there for them?
I think when we focus more on the preventive method, it's
Okay.
going to help a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to let these people understand the laws regarding public nudity.
All right.
Yes, and we have to teach them societal norms. Yes, so when we are able to do this, I think people will be scared because they know that if I do this, these are the consequences. Yes, and we need to educate people on some of the things they need to know about exhibitionism, indecent public exposure, and the negative impacts as well. When they are able to do that, it will help. And most people with the indecent public exposure, most people um, engage in these risky behaviors um, because of intoxication. When they are intoxicated with alcohol and all that, under the influence of alcohol, they can do that. So we have to also establish substance abuse programs to address addiction, yes, to prevent risky behaviors that are associated with intoxication. And we have to counsel people with exhibitionism so that they can balance life and live a good life. When we are able to do this at the early stages or the early life is going to prevent all these behaviors.
So that means we need to work with a lot of people get involved. Like the
Yes,
police have to get involved, the
yes,
lawyer have to get involved, the hospitality, the mental
yes,
health, and the civic society movement have to get involved. Schools have to get involved,
yes,
so that this message can ripple through to the community, into the schools, to the universities, that there is a legal requirement that you behave a certain way, but if you expose yourself, these are the consequences.
yes,
And alcohol, they need to have structures in place to say
yes,
alcohol is banned at this place.
yes,
For this place, alcohol is banned and so on. So
yes,
because if people are intoxicated, this is what they happen.
yes,
And those who have packs also, we tell them that they have laws restricting use of alcohol or encouraging or putting fines or penalty for those
sure,
who are drinking and misbehave like that. Okay,
yes.
so we have talked about indecent public exposure. We talked about exhibitionism. We talked about what is available out there, the professional help. What do you want to tell our viewers in this quest of educating people about mental health and also sexual behavior? What do you want to tell them? You can look through the camera and then you talk to them about it.
So I want to tell my viewers that they have to pay attention to whatever we are discussing here. This is a form of education, and we are educating them to know something about indecent public exposure and exhibitionism. So if you know someone who is going through this, struggling with this, you can encourage that person to go and seek for professional assistance. We as the individuals, the those working in the judiciary service, we have to educate people about the laws that are regarding indecent public exposure so that people can know the consequences of these behaviors. When we do that, I think it will help reduce the number of cases we have in Ghana and the worldwide. Thank you.
And that's so important that we get to a place where we don't only talk about things, we put structures in place, and
Yes,
those structures are there to prevent. And if people have suffered or have been traumatized by these experiences, there are helplines available. That's why we are here, Sex in the Temple, work with multiple people from different backgrounds to ensure that we don't only educate you, but we also give you help for the victims and for the perpetrators. There is help available. Don't expose yourself in places that is not decent, is not appropriate, because you are not only hurting yourself, you may be sexually satisfied, but the victim is left traumatized, if not for a long time, but for life. This is Sex in the Temple, and my name